Okay, yeah. Okay, got it. Okay. One of the things that was it came up yesterday was Sensei kind of would talk about various things. Like one thing he said was, there are no forms in Aikido, because Aikido is a study of the spirit. And another quote that sort of came up to me during the class was, use the body to train the spirit. And, you know, spirit and mind are somewhat connected, because you don't, you know, you sense spirit, you can recognize it, but you don't really see spirit. You see a manifestation of it. Okay? So use the body to train the spirit. And, you know, and just put an aside there, it wasn't quote, the mind. And the other one, there are no forms in Aikido, because Aikido is a study of the spirit. And the two struck me as being very interconnected. Okay? And one of the things that we were kind of going on, we're just doing a basic shihonage. Step back, take the rest, step in, turn, throw. But using the body to train the spirit. Your hands, we simply just start up. Your hips, okay? Your feet. Hands, hips, feet. Now initially it's a conscious thought. Hands, hips, feet. Now the shihonage is a step back, step in. Step back, step in. So your feet, your hips, your hands go the same direction, so they go in the other direction. Boom, boom. Now if there's a gap, boom, this is what's called an opening. Boom, boom. And then there's the turn. And there's that state where you're going from this to that to the turn throw. Without a break in that, the hands, the hips, the feet, they'll move together. And what oftentimes is missed, you can't, it just takes a lot of concentration and thinking. But spirit is fluid and free, and there's kind of an empty, not a vacant, but an emptiness to it. Emptiness and freedom. Go that way, go that way, that way. When thinking and analyzing, it throws the whole system off. And I have to do that in order to get it, you know, but you think and analyze to get a feel sense. And then, so the spirit is kind of an empty, alive place. And mind, in that, you know, connection with spirit, because there's body, it's got to be mind, is more of a calm. I mean, you've assessed the movements, but you're in the moment with those changes. And so just something like a shihonage, for example. And before I forget, we're going to put the lens on and move this back a little bit. And some days doesn't want to go on. But, okay. Yeah. This allows me to get a full body shot without going to the back of the room. You can slant. In other words, what I'm doing is just walking this direction. I'm sort of still moving. Walking motion, your feet, your hips. Maybe your focus is going. Take a couple steps back. In the shihonage, you start with group. Let's take a step back. Your feet, your hips, your hands. They move together. Feet, hips, in motion. Feet, hips, hands. Feet, hips, hands. Or more of a firm grip. You put the angle of your feet, hips, hands. Now, initially, understand the step, take the wrist, then I have to do that. Feet, hips, hands. In motion, somebody with feet, hips, hands. Okay, so try that motion. I'm not sure how much of that we can replicate without a new kit, without feedback. Okay, so a lot of what that is, in other words, for you to get your feet, your hips, your hands moving together. The spirit must be very free, confused, locked. Therefore, the mind is clear. So again, Osensei's thing, we use the body to train the spirit. Spirit is free. It's free, it's free. But spirit's kind of locked up because I'm caught up in too many things out there. Anybody with a question or comment on that? See, we're working kind of backwards. I'm going to free the spirit up so the body moves. You can do that. Although oftentimes you have to have an activity or something to train the spirit, motion, body. Other than that, spirit can be very abstract. So anybody with just a beginning move of the shihonage, anybody with a sense of use the body to train the mind. On the other hand, there is no form because it's study of the spirit. We're using the body, the techniques, emotions to train the spirit, to get to spirit. Anybody?
Sensei, this is Bonnie. I have an observation.
Sure.
I was doing just some motions to try to sense what you were talking about. And as I was doing a shihonage, as I was doing a motion, the squirrel that I've come to be close to and to get those messages from sometime. As I did a shihonage motion, he started barking in the background right at the perfect timing. So just an observation of energy somehow connecting.
Okay. Well, a lot of times we did a class here the other day. They were doing some work outside, and it's annoying. All of a sudden you find you see, that can take my spirit. My mind gets very cloudy and agitated. All of a sudden I can't focus on this. So the ability sometimes, okay, gonna be cool with that. Is training also. And so it's interesting, let's say when you're really close to something, the world starts to bark. It's interesting if you observe it that way. The world starts to bark or groan or make a racket or something comes up to pull you out. Anybody else with an observation? That's that first step in shihonage, whatever. Cliff, anything you might add? You weren't there yesterday, but anything you might notice on this one?
Just noticing, I'm not really noticing anything in spirit. I'm noticing that my body is it feels smooth when I'm integrating the whole body.
Okay.
So
Yes.
I'm looking at it at a kind of physical realm at the moment.
Well, for example, in the Osensei, he talks about 2x2, 4x4, that sort of thing. Bobby, Robert, whatever. And one of the things about it, that Robert's supposed to do the movement better than Bobby, and Nadeau is supposed to do the movement better than Robert. And so, sometimes that's confusing. But one of the things about it, you clear the spirit. There's a certain amount of spirit in Bobby. Okay, but some of that clears, and there's a Robert. But then there's still stuff going on. And let's clear that a bit more. There's Wada. Let's clear that a little bit more. There's another Osensei. You see what I mean? I mean, you can use steps, or you can use a shihonage, or whatever it is. But, to some degree, I mean, what you're really looking at is you are using a motion, which would be a 1x1, 2x2, 3x3, a shihonage step back. You're using the body to train the spirit, aren't you? Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're connected. So there's a feedback loop.
Well, one of the tricky things is that, Robert does the movement better than Bobby. Yes, that's somewhat tangible, okay? But getting what's really going on is sometimes, a little different. Okay? And so, other than that, Robert's satisfied because he's better than Bobby, and he should be. But,
Well, there's also things that are open to Robert that aren't open to Bobby, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Or let's just say, in terms of your feet, your hips, your hands, Robert tends to use his resources much more skillfully than Bobby does. You see? But there's been a shift at the level of something you might call spirit going from Bobby to Robert. And so that's also a study. Okay. Now, what I thought we'd do, so somebody happens to grab. Okay, now the other thing you can do, you can distract. Because I'm going to go here, there's an opening. Distract. The distract means that it's a potential strike, but nobody comes to Aikido and gets smashed in the face. Okay, so but it's put out with as much conviction that it can be a strike before it distracts. See, even here, the weight shifts in the feet, the hips support that motion, the arm goes on. This doesn't pull, it stays relaxed. And then there's that motion. Now, so you've got your hands, your hips, your feet. Now what we're going to do is that motion. So there's that and there's that. And the trick is all three hands, hips, feet go the same way and they can reverse. Now, right about there, I just go here, there's an opening here, so we go back into stride. Now, right here, I'm stepping in, but I might step into something. It's very important. Boom. Boom, boom. Then right there, you come up with a conundrum right there, because you can twist the hips, cover that, then step, or you step before you do the hip. Okay? But simply put, it's a reversal of that 1, 2, 3, or another 1, 2, 3, without a break. Boom, boom. See, if I'm looking or thinking about this, there's a hole that's created. My attention goes out. Okay. Boom. Boom. Now the question is right here, do I stop and twist the wrist and rotate the hips to get that motion? If I do that, I run into the waiter technique, partner, and that up here is real difficult. So just take that shihonage motion back in. Then you got this, you got this. They're all moving together, and there's that change where they all move together. They all move together here. Okay, boom. Okay. So picking apart the shihonage, difficult to do without the feedback of your partner, but give it a try. Okay. So we've got the step back and the step in. Anybody with a question on that? I mean, in terms of your own training, people kind of, they kind of get questions like, okay, you step back, but you can step back in, but you can also step right into something. So how do you cover that opening? Conversely, sometimes you take that step and everybody it's real heavy and it's difficult to do the turn to do the throw. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that comes up right there. If you go into your muscle memory of your training, some of that will come up. Okay, and this is more of a chalk talk session. How can we utilize what Osensei is saying? Okay, which is you use the body to train the spirit, but really there are no forms because actually there was a study of the spirit. We do shihonage, okay. There's a body function to shihonage, but there's also an overriding spiritual sense to it. Anybody? Cliff, anything come up for you?
On one level, I was trying
Okay.
not to bang into the furniture.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I could feel, I was trying to integrate it into one motion. Like when you talked about the 30 movement staff missing, you know, I was trying to, for second level, you know, we're trying to integrate it into one big motion. So I was trying to do that with shihonage because we've just been, you know, going over the parts.
Yeah.
But the hardest thing I've found to integrate into one fluid motion, into one idea, into one thing, into a unity, is the reversals, right?
Yeah.
Because that's reversal is part of a unity, but it's also a reversal, and so the brain tends to break it up into chunks, right? Like, okay, now I'm going back, now I'm reversing, right? And it should just be one thing, like an infinity symbol. I don't know. That's what you got. That's what my thoughts are at the moment.
Okay. Now, you know, the thing about training the spirit is it's tricky because, you know, in some sense, you know, there's this saying, you know, mind leads the body, spirit leads the mind. Spirit leads the system. And to some degree, you don't train the spirit. Spirit is spirit. What you do is you bring yourself into a place where you can use your resources, mind, body. And it's generally, as much as you accumulate mentally, physically about it, you have to let go of that to let the spirit lead. It's a contradiction. Use the body to train the spirit. No, spirit is spirit. Spirit doesn't need to train. Okay. But the spirit connected with this body and this person needs to kind of, in some sense, be let go enough to lead emotion.
My first Aikido sensei, Don Levine sensei, who was also a professor of sociology,
Yeah.
he talked about a lot about how in Western philosophical tradition, there's this mind-body dichotomy that Aikido that is not expressed in Aikido. In Aikido, it's mind-body unity, right? And so, or spirit and body, right? So the thing that we're trying to do is to overcome a false dichotomy that's part of our culture.
Yeah.
And the training to me, right, is to strengthen that connection or to strengthen the awareness of the connection that's already there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And so practicing technique is a vehicle to that because it is practicing mindful connection.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Bonnie, anything you want to add?
Sensei, nothing to add right now. I have somebody that just stopped by the apartment, so I'm a bit distracted. Apologies.
Oh. Okay. Now, so we have that motion, and then we have the turn. Okay. That motion, that motion, that motion. Now, a lot of times on the turn, you get good at turning and twisting. Because, you know, the twisting or the trying to move our partner's weight is a part of the, what we call the legs turn and throw. But one thing that's interesting, moving this way, there's a tendency when I think throw out there to lose the unity between, let's just say, your hands, your hips, and your feet. All of a sudden, I start to position, I start to twist, I start to drop my weight, I start to pull, and boom. Well, I get the feeling of those three things moving as one. Those three things moving as one, and this is not a conclusion, but it's a check. That turnaround is where a lot of things start. And again, spirit leads both mind and body. Okay. So, you can, another word for spirit might be ki. That's a translation. Ki can be translated as spirit. Okay. So, try that motion again, to step back, to turn. Now step back, to step in, and to turn. And you got muscle memory. What do you do on that turn? What's the first thing you go for? Is pull on the arm, twist the arm, drop your weight, step in. Okay. Anybody on that turn motion? You get the first two right and then lock yourself up on that turn. Doesn't mean you can't, twist your partner down. Anybody?
This is Yaro. I notice if I try, like before the turn, if I'm coming with my whole body, the turn is okay. But if I try to put out my hands first and then do the turn gets all messed up. It's more like cranking. Like if I use my whole body, the turn ends up all right. But if I mess up that first part, it messes everything else up.
Well, you can't do it with the arms. There's got to be hips behind it. And oftentimes you're just there's feet. All right, so all three of those increasingly move as one. And as that happens, the spirit basically leads. You want the spirit very clear, free. And then mind itself starts to calm down. So, when Osensei said, the body is important, but then again, the body could be like a drawing motion, the thrusting motion. Cut, thrust. Anybody else with that turn? The turn, so turn can upset your apple cart pretty quick. Anybody? Okay. And so we were kind of talking about some things. The first time I ever saw somebody from Japan who was like really very high rank was my first year in Santa Cruz. And there weren't Aikido schools. There was Mountain View. There was a dojo in South San Francisco. other than that, there were groups, there were recreation department classes. Right. We had a club at UC Santa Cruz. So Koichi Tohei Sensei comes in. And there's a pretty good gathering of Aikidoists, but very few schools. And so they rented a high school somewhere in San Mateo. And everybody else was in the band. So a bunch of us from Santa Cruz, we just watched. And Tori Sensei was really impressive. I mean, just like when his feet touched the ground, it felt like pillars, People would come at him, boom, they'd still fly. And we were talking about him after the class was over. And Robert Frazier Sensei came by, he happened to be listening. And so what he said was interesting. He said, you people are confusing Tohei Sensei for Osensei. And so, the obvious question was, well, what's the difference? And what Robert Frazier Sensei said was, Tohei Sensei is too strong. He realized, very much on the strength of his ki flow. And he left it at that. Okay, well, what's this? We're confusing Osensei for Tohei Sensei for Osensei, and the difference is that Tohei Sensei is too strong to be Osensei. So what does that make Osensei, right? And so, I can't remember who it was, but this one guy came up with probably the best observation. And it was something to the effect of, here's Tohei, mind over body. And there's Osensei. And we'll put the terms kind of as if they're about the same. Soul, spirit over mind. Tohei Sensei was mind leads the body. Therefore, mind, leads the body. Sensei was spirit leads both. It's a little different. Or soul, which word issues soul. The soul and spirit are somewhat interchangeable up to a point. So if I'm going to stand, spirit says stand. I'm going to stand up. I got to stand up. I got a lot of activity here. Spirit says step back. Spirit says stand. Spirit says turn. Free motion, free motion, free motion. In some sense, spirit doesn't need to be trained. My system, mind, body needs to be trained to let go to where spirit leads. That's it's just one way of looking at it. Okay? So, we're just saying, okay, we're going to go that way. Your feet, your hips, your hands, they go that way. You go this way. I'll go this way, I got it. You go this way, this way. Go this way, this way. This way, this way. Spirit's pretty free. Spirit can be very still, it can be very active, but it's always connected to itself. And so at some point, what we're really doing, training the body and training the mind along with the body, is to not train spirit, but get the mind-body connection to a place where they allow spirit to lead. Okay, that's one way of putting it. There's other ways of phrasing it. So a lot of, I think, what Osensei meant by some people is you're doing activities mind-body to get the mind and the body to a place where spirit can lead. Then Osensei says there are no forms in Aikido, because Aikido is a study of the spirit. Spirit's fluid, spirit's free. Spirit can be very, very still. Spirit can be very loving. There's a lot of power in spirit. You should let spirit lead. And a lot of the training is geared towards that. Anyway, that's what we tried to present yesterday at the mountain class. Anybody with a question or comment?
Sensei, I have a question,
Sure.
maybe to help reconnect mind, spirit to body, since I was distracted by the visitor.
So yeah, that happens. The world throws everything at you.
So it's almost like I'm pulling in the energies with the shihonage. It's very interesting because I just sold 2 mirrors, very symbolic. But for shihonage, I believe that means 4 directions. So the shihonage or shihochawa. Can you?
Four-sided throat. 4 is side.
Four
I naturally go more towards the corners. You know, I don't reference the sides as much as I kind of see the angles of the corners, but you're obviously facing the corners because, you know, it's just the sides gets too angular. The sides give you the circle. You need them both to move freely.
Okay.
Yeah, but keep going.
Well, I was gonna ask about the 4 sides, or I was saying 4 directions, the 4 sides, just to for the visual that you were kind of doing. Just I was feeling the flow, but just to get more into that flow, to get a better feel sense of connecting the spirit and the mind. So basically, what you were. So
Yeah, okay.
So
Once your mind body go into balance, you generally experience more flow. Okay. But spirit directs flow. Spirit directs flow. And of course, mind, situation, you know, intelligence of the system is important, and the training of the body to support those 2 is important. But ultimately, see, we want to go just spirit leads. Spirit's free. Spirit's very open. So, I mean, that's just one way of looking at it. Another question is, what the hell is spirit? Okay. And, you know, one of the ways of translating is spirit. So, Cliff, anything from your standpoint?
Not at this time. I've also had a couple of distractions here at the house.
Yeah. It's amazing how the world will do that. You know, that whole thing about the Buddhist sitting underneath the tree. All these distractions. Some of them hard to turn down. But he just sits. It's almost like spirit is not what you see on the movie screen. Spirit is the movie screen. Although, in some sense, all of that motion that you see on the screen is going on in the screen. The spirit is the screen with all the movement going on. And, you know, shihonage is like a film we're playing. And we're kind of right now chopping it up in the editing room to see whether we need to reshoot anything. Okay. Yeah. We're just picking up anything right here. Okay. Now, one of the things that, you know, I do, for example, is this motion. The hands move, the feet, the hips move forward, and the feet move. This is a weight shift. The weight shift move. His arms. So when I move this way, it's primarily shoulder before the hips move. But the hips move. Then also feet move. And a lot of what Aikido is based on is movement in reverse. In other words, the hands, the hips, feet go that. They can go that. That's why spirit is very free. Not sloppy. It's pretty Each of those movements, and now what happens is right here, in that motion, there's a couple of sub movements. But each of those sub movements, the hips, knees, they move together. I'm going to use this a lot, largely what I can do. Use that. But again, we will shield. Okay? Shield. Okay? These movements are actually more complex than the shield. Because what we're doing is we're going to here, there's reversals and reversals within reversals. And each of those, the body and the mind, or let's say your hands, your hips, your feet, are moving together as one. Now, some of that really forms, you get kind of a feel. But, each of those is a change of direction. Okay. And so try it. Just pick something up. I'm using a shorter, lighter one. Sometimes I use larger, heavier ones. Each of those changes is the arms, hips, feet, but you can. There are changes within the changes, and the movement of the hands, hips, feet support that. Okay, just for a second, let's check in. That's a practice you can do. For example, here we go this way, we stop, we go this way. But well, even though it's primarily the change from the hands, and here, everything's still, but everything can pick up. And there's another still. There's another still. And it looks like I'm just going, each of these movements. So it's another way of training. When I'm doing that, spirit can also be heavy. Sometimes I use one of the heavier ones. Just because that's just a different way. I mean, even within the heavier sense of things, spirit is still quite fluid. So, what I like with these things is I get to let spirit lead. As my own system, mind, body develop, spirit becomes even freer. There's more tools to work with to show its freedom through you or you. And in that state, my mind is very calm. It's inclusive. My body's relaxed, especially turn on a dime. So that's an area of practice. We start thinking. I'm not in spirit anymore. Spirit's not leading. My mind is taking it over. Okay? And then what happens? My body starts to kind of lock into what the mind's saying. But the spirit itself, in that moment, it leads. There's nothing about it that's violent or anything. It's very calm. Any observations on that? I'm not saying that's easy, by the way. What you'll kind of find is when you're there, you won't even notice it. Well, that's kind of cool. So sometimes you have to get an appreciation of what you're actually doing. So you find it. You do a good shihonage where you're able to make the changes. Back, forward, turn. That's a pretty good piece of work. Okay? And at some point, you let the spirit lead. You call that spirit ki, Aikido. I, mind and body coming together to a spirit ki and lead. And what's produced there, that your mind and your body, the spirit, is harmony. Anybody, anything to add on that one? That's kind of a very difficult and very deep lesson. Anybody, Cliff, anything to add about that?
Nothing profound. I'm still trying to integrate it.
Yeah, sometimes, your mind's just gotta shut up for a bit. Is basically what it is. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, no, I'm not saying that in a rude way. Those senseis always telling me to shut up. So sometimes you gotta, mind's getting a little too active, or a little too whatever. Somebody just gotta, you gotta just, sometimes you just have to shut yourself up and let spirit sort of lead. Okay? Doesn't mean you don't develop your mind. That's the other thing. Bruce Lee put it well. So a limited mind is not a free mind. Limited mind imposes too much on spirit. Okay? And the body is important because the body provides materials for these changes. So there's development at the level of the body. If I can, spirit leads. That's kind of a place that, if the world, I would just say about the world right now, the spirit is twisted so much. Right? The political factions and the economic divisions and nationalistic this and that. Spirit's there is central. And when Osensei is really talking about heaven on earth, or whatever, but we just see past all that stuff that's creating all these tools. Let spirit lead. And there you find that level of love, I think you were talking about. And then, when you're really letting spirit lead, you start to address the problems of the planet on a united front. Okay, we're too busy going this way, right? But that's also our own system when we're doing a shihonage or another move. Anybody before we break? Because it's about 1 o'clock. So we will be Wednesday in Mountain View. Okay. If you can't make it, we put it online. We a little behind, but we get it on YouTube so you can replay it or play it if you haven't been there. So anybody before we break? Okay?
Thank you, Sensei.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sensei.